Your newly bought phone has been out for a week. By Monday, the thrill is already gone. You're swiping through the same apps, reading the same group chats, scrolling the same feeds. The home screen looks identical. The camera takes photos you can't distinguish from last week's. 72 hours. That is how long the dopamine lasts on a $1,199 purchase. The payment plan runs for 24 months. And somewhere around month 18, you'll feel that familiar itch again. That quiet voice whispering that what you're holding is no longer enough. Not because anything broke, not because anything slowed down, because someone stood on a stage and showed you a screen that was slightly brighter. Think about that for a second. You aren't upgrading because your device failed you. You're upgrading because your perception of your device was deliberately, surgically altered by a company that spent billions learning exactly how to make satisfaction evaporate on command. You probably think you're the exception. You did the research, watched every review, compared every spec sheet, refreshed every rumor thread for months. You knew the new processor was only 3% faster. You knew the camera added one lens you'd rarely use. You couldn't name a single thing your current phone couldn't do. It made calls, it sent texts, it ran every app you needed. The photos were good enough for anything you actually posted, 18 months old and working perfectly. And yet, standing in that line on a Friday morning in September, clutching $1,199 worth of intent, you felt like you were falling behind. Your phone hadn't changed since the night before. You used it to watch the very keynote that announced its replacement. Nothing was different about the device. Everything was different about how you felt holding it. That isn't a coincidence. That is the product. Not the phone in the box, the feeling in your chest. The manufactured inadequacy that turns a perfectly functional piece of technology into something that suddenly feels like it is holding you back. Your phone didn't get worse overnight. You were told it got worse, and you believed it because the telling was so seamless, so culturally embedded, so ritualistically repeated every single year that it stopped feeling like marketing and started feeling like truth. Here is what nobody in that line wants to hear. The business model of every major tech company on the planet is not built on selling you a great device. It is built on selling you the same device again and again, with incremental changes dressed up as revolutionary leaps. They don't need to make your old phone worse. They need to make you feel like it is worse. A keynote, a wave of ads, a cultural moment engineered so precisely that millions of people look down at their current phone on the same day and think the same thought at the same time. Maybe it is time. The average American household hemorrhages tens of thousands of dollars over a lifetime, feeding this cycle, not paying for innovation, paying for the illusion of innovation. A 3% speed bump repackaged as a generational leap. A camera sensor upgrade you'll never push past auto mode. A screen brightness increase invisible indoors. The money leaves your account in small, automatic installments. Easy enough to ignore month by month. Devastating enough to reshape your finances over a decade. The novelty died in 3 days. The debt lives for 2 years. And the cycle resets before the debt is even paid off. So before we go any further, sit with that. Every informed decision you thought you were making, the spec comparisons, the review marathons, the careful deliberation, all of it was happening inside a framework someone else built. The question was never whether to upgrade, it was always when. And that invisible architecture of inevitability is exactly where the real extraction begins. Because the numbers behind this cycle tell a story far worse than any single $1,199 receipt. $340,000. That is the number waiting at the end of a spreadsheet most people will never bother to open, not because the math is hard, but because the conclusion is too uncomfortable to sit with. That figure is what a basic index fund at 8% annual returns would have grown to over 40 years if you'd redirected your consumer electronics spending into something that compounds instead of depreciates. You didn't invest it, you unboxed it, admired it for a week, and watched it lose half its value before the next keynote even aired. Work backward from that number. The Consumer Technology Association reported in 2023 that the average American household spends roughly $1,700 per year on electronics. Multiply across a 40-year adult life, and you land at $68,000 in raw outflow. That is a down payment on a house in most markets, a luxury car in a driveway. But you never see it leave because it exits your account in fragments. $850 here, $1,200 there, small enough to feel manageable, large enough to quietly reshape your financial trajectory. Start with just the phone in your hand. Consumer Intelligence Research Partners puts the average smartphone selling price in America above $850 now, with flagships routinely crossing $1,000. The average person swaps that phone every 33 months, even though modern devices are built to last 5 to 7 years with basic care. Run that cycle at $850 per phone over 4 decades, and you spend $12,143 on smartphones alone. Before cases, before chargers, before Apple Care, before the monthly financing plan engineered so you never feel the full weight of a single transaction. Stack the rest. Laptops at $1,200 every 3 to 4 years. Tablets at $600 every 4. Smartwatches at $400 every 3. Wireless earbuds at $200 every 2. Each line item looks reasonable on its own. Together, they form a conveyor belt moving $1,700 out of your household every year, decade after decade in silence. Now here is what makes this math truly ruthless. The spending isn't accidental, it is engineered from both sides. In 2017, Apple paid $500 million to settle a lawsuit after admitting it had throttled older iPhones through software updates. Users weren't imagining the lag that appeared right around new model launches. Every subsequent operating system version demands more processing power. More RAM, more storage than your 3-year-old hardware can comfortably deliver. Your phone didn't break, it was updated into degradation, and the only remedy offered was a new purchase. Somewhere right now, someone is unboxing a refurbished phone they paid $450 for. It texts, it streams, it takes photos that look identical to the ones shot on a device twice its price. And the person who traded that phone in 6 months ago is sitting across town, swiping through the same apps on their brand new model, unable to point to a single thing it does that the old one couldn't. 2 people, 2 devices, one paid $1,000, the other paid less than half. In daily use, neither one can tell the difference. That gap, that $550 sitting in the space between perception and reality, is not a market inefficiency. It is the harvest. This is how value actually layers in the upgrade economy. A flagship from 2022 and a flagship from 2025 handle 95% of what you actually do with a phone. Texts go through, calls connect. Photos land on social media, and nobody scrolling past can tell which camera took them. The newer model processes tasks perhaps 3 to 5% faster. Its low-light photos are marginally sharper. In conditions you encounter a handful of times a year, which changes nothing when you're on your couch at 11 at night. Researchers at Wayne State University handed people flagship phones from different generations and asked them to perform everyday tasks. The users couldn't reliably identify which device was newer. Not in texting, not in browsing, not in photo quality on a phone-sized screen. The only place the gap appeared was in synthetic benchmarks. tests engineered specifically to measure differences that human fingers and eyes can't register. You aren't paying $1,000 for a better experience. You're paying $1,000 for the knowledge that a number on a spec sheet went up. That isn't value. That is a receipt for a feeling. So when you see that $1,000 price tag on a new device, understand what you're actually looking at. The company captures your money. The refurbished buyer captures your old device at a fraction of its real performance value, and you capture a 3 to 5% improvement that you can't perceive with your own hands. That isn't an upgrade. That is a wealth transfer dressed in brushed titanium. $214,000. That is the number sitting in a drawer in your bedroom right now, disguised as 3 old phones, a cracked tablet, and a laptop with a swollen battery. You keep meaning to recycle, not the devices themselves, the accumulated cost of replacing them before they stopped working, compounded over a lifetime at 8% annual returns. That money doesn't come back. It was converted into electronic waste and marketing revenue, one upgrade cycle at a time. But the next $214,000 hasn't been spent yet. And stopping the bleeding doesn't require a financial advisor or a budgeting app or some 12-step program for consumer electronics. It requires one boring action you can do tonight in under 4 minutes. Open the Notes app on your phone. The one already installed, not a new one you need to download. Type 5 things you did with your phone today. Not 5 things your phone can do. 5 things you actually did. For most people, that list looks almost identical every single day. Email, scrolling social media, taking a photo of something forgettable, streaming something in the background while cooking. That is your actual use case. Write it down because your memory of what you need will betray you. The moment a keynote starts playing, your written list won't. It sits there plain and undeniable. The next time a manufacturer tries to convince you that a 3% faster processor changes your life, you don't need more processing power for Instagram. You never did. Here is what person B actually does differently from person A. Stripped of all philosophy, person B doesn't have more willpower. Person B isn't a minimalist or an environmentalist or someone who hates technology. Person B has a note on their phone that says what they use it for, checks battery health once every 6 months, and refuses to watch product launch events live. That is it. No manifesto, no lifestyle overhaul. 3 mechanical habits that collectively redirect $1,900 a year away from manufacturers and toward a place where it compounds. That is the entire method. One note, one battery check. The gap between person A and person B isn't income or intelligence or discipline. It is 4 minutes of writing and the willingness to look at what you actually do before someone else tells you what you should want. Picture September rolling around again. A new phone gets announced, and this time you feel nothing. No itch, no inadequacy, no phantom vibration telling you that what you own is suddenly less than what it was 24 hours ago. That silence in your chest isn't apathy. It is the sound of an exit door you walk through on your own terms, and nobody on a keynote stage can pull you back. That is what this comes down to. Not a promise that you'll get rich. Not some fantasy where skipping one phone purchase turns into a beach house. The math doesn't work that way, and anyone who tells you it does is selling something. What the math does support is something quieter and far more durable. A buffer, breathing room between you and the next emergency. That would have sent you reaching for a credit card. Here is what the exit actually looks like in practice. And it is so small, it almost feels like nothing. You open your phone right now, count the apps you haven't touched in 6 months. The average sits around 80, according to Assurion's own data. 80 programs, clogging storage, dragging processing speed. making a perfectly capable device feel like it is dying. Delete them, factory reset if you have to. That sluggishness you blamed on aging hardware is almost always software rot, not a death sentence. The device you were ready to replace might run like it did the day you unboxed it. That isn't a hack. That is a $100 battery swap. And 30 minutes of cleanup buying you 2 more years. With a machine that already does everything you need, and when the day genuinely arrives that your device can't run the software your life depends on, when a fresh battery still drains by noon, when the screen is cracked past function and not just past aesthetics, then you upgrade. But you do it on your schedule, not on a September countdown, manufactured by people who need your dissatisfaction to hit quarterly targets. Someone out there picked up a refurbished iPhone 15, unlocked, 91% battery health, double the storage for $260. That phone is functionally identical to what someone else paid 4 times more for at a launch event. The stigma around refurbished exists because it is profitable for it to exist. The devices themselves don't care what box they came in. A smartphone that lasts you 5 years instead of 2. A laptop you ride for 7 years instead of 3. A tablet that stays in rotation for 6. None of these timelines require sacrifice. They require one decision repeated quietly over and over. Measure the device against what you actually do with it, not against what a commercial says you should feel about it. This isn't about becoming the person who brags about their old phone. It isn't about frugality as a personality trait. It is about recognizing that every 18 months, a system worth hundreds of billions of dollars activates specifically to make you feel like what you have isn't enough. And the only real leverage you hold is the ability to look at the device in your hand, confirm that it still calls, still texts, still loads every single thing you need, and simply not show up with $1,000 on command.